Globalization and the United Nations are closely intertwined concepts in contemporary international relations. Globalization refers to the process of increased interconnectedness and interdependence among countries, primarily in terms of economic, political, and cultural relations. The role of the UN in this context is multifaceted. First, the United Nations, UN. The United Nations is indeed a cornerstone of modern international relations. Having been established in 1945 in the aftermath of World War II, its founding mission was to prevent another such conflict and to foster international cooperation. As the world has evolved, so too has the role of the UN. Here's an overview of the UN's key functions and its relevance in the era of globalization within the character limit. 1. Maintenance of international peace and security. Peacekeeping and conflict resolution. The UN deploys peacekeeping forces to regions where armed conflict has recently ceased or is still ongoing to enforce ceasefires and create conditions for sustainable peace. The UN's role in peacekeeping and conflict resolution is crucial in regions affected by armed conflict. By deploying peacekeeping forces, the UN works to enforce ceasefires and establish conditions for sustainable peace, focusing on stabilizing areas, protecting civilians, and supporting the implementation of peace agreements. This effort is vital for maintaining international peace and security in a complex global landscape. Mediation and diplomatic engagement. It mediates disputes between nations to prevent escalation into armed conflict and assists in negotiating peace agreements. The UN activity mediates disputes between nations to prevent escalation into armed conflict. Through diplomatic engagement, it facilitates dialogue and negotiation, helping conflicting parties reach peaceful resolutions. This role is essential in maintaining international peace and stability, as it aids in the prevention of conflicts and the negotiation of sustainable peace agreements. 2. Development of friendly relations among nations. Promotion of democracy and human rights. The UN advocates for human rights and fundamental freedoms, as outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The UN champions human rights and democracy, advocating for the principles set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It plays a vital role in promoting fundamental freedoms and democratic values globally. seeking to ensure respect for the dignity and rights of all individuals. Cultural and educational exchange through UNESCO and other agencies. It promotes cultural exchanges and educational opportunities that foster mutual understanding among diverse populations. Through UNESCO and other agencies, the UN fosters cultural and educational exchanges, enhancing mutual understanding among diverse populations. These programs promote global awareness and appreciation of cultural diversity, and they facilitate educational opportunities that contribute to international cooperation and peace. 3. International cooperation in solving international problems. Global health initiatives, the WHO or UN agency, leads global efforts to combat disease and health crises like pandemics. Key World Health Organization or UN agency spearheads global health initiatives, leading international efforts to combat diseases and respond to health crises, including pandemics. It plays a crucial role in coordinating global health strategies and responses. Environmental sustainability. The UN plays a pivotal role in global environmental policies, like the Paris Agreement on climate change. The UN is instrumental in shaping global environmental policies, prominently through agreements like the Paris Agreement on climate change. Its efforts are key to promoting environmental sustainability and coordinating international responses to ecological challenges. Economic development. Agencies like UNDP, World Bank, and IMF work on various aspects of economic development and poverty reduction. Agencies like UNDP, World Bank, and IMF under the UN's framework concentrate on various facets of economic development and poverty alleviation. Their collaborative efforts aim to foster sustainable economic growth, reinforce financial stability, and elevate global living standards. 4. Center for Harmonizing Action of Nations. Diplomatic Forum, the UN General Assembly and the Security Council provide a forum where nations can discuss and formulate policies on international issues. The UN General Assembly and the Security Council serve as vital diplomatic forums where nations convene to discuss and shape policies on pressing international issues. This platform is crucial for global dialogue and policymaking in international affairs. Setting international standards, the UN and its agencies are instrumental in developing international laws. regulations, and the norms in various sectors. The UN and its agencies play a key role in establishing international standards, crafting laws, regulations, and norms across diverse sectors. This function is fundamental in creating a cohesive framework for global governance and cooperation. 5. Role in the era of globalization. Addressing transnational challenges in a globalized world, problems like climate change, pandemics, and terrorism cannot be contained within national borders. In our interconnected world, the UN addresses transnational challenges such as climate change, pandemics, and terrorism, recognizing that these issues transcend national borders and require coordinated global response. The UN facilitates coordinated international response to such challenges. Promotion of global dialogue and understanding. The UN fosters dialogue between civilizations, cultures, and the peoples, promoting a global culture of peace and mutual understanding. The UN promotes global dialogue and understanding, fostering interactions among different civilizations, cultures, and peoples. This effort is vital in building a culture of peace and mutual respect on an international scale. 6. Challenges and criticisms. Relevance and effectiveness. The UN has faced criticism regarding its effectiveness, especially in conflict resolution and enforce its resolutions. The UN has encountered criticism concerning its effectiveness, particularly in resolving conflicts and enforcing resolutions, prompting ongoing discussions about its operational approaches and the need for potential reforms. Representation and democracy. Questions are often raised about the democratic representation within UN bodies, particularly the Security Council. Questions about the democratic representation within UN bodies, especially the Security Council, are frequently raised, highlighting concerns about the inclusivity and equity of current global governance system. Funding and resources. The organization often struggles with adequate funding and resources, affecting its ability to carry out its mission. The UN frequently grapples with challenges in securing adequate funding and resources, which can impact its capacity to effectively fulfill its mission and address global issues. 7. Future directions. Adapting to new global realities. The UN continually evolves to address emerging global challenges like digital governance, cybersecurity, and the effects of technological advancements on security, society. The UN is constantly evolving to meet emerging global challenges, including digital governance, cybersecurity, and the societal impacts of their technological advancements. Adapting its approaches to align with new global realities. Strengthening international law, the UN plays a vital role in the development and reinforcement of international law, including human rights law, humanitarian law, and international criminal law. The UN plays a critical role in strengthening international law, actively contributing to the development and reinforcement of human rights law, humanitarian law, and international criminal law to uphold global justice and order, promoting sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are key UN initiatives aiming to address global issues like poverty, inequality, and environmental degradation by 2030. The UN's Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are central initiative aimed at tackling global issues such as poverty, inequality, and environmental degradation, with a target to achieve these goals by 2030. Promoting sustainable development worldwide. In summary, the United Nations remains an indispensable institution in global affairs. Its role in promoting peace, security, and cooperation in an interconnected world is more vital than ever. However, the organization also faces significant challenges and must adapt to remain effective in addressing the complex issues of the 21st century.
Everyone's heard of the United Nations, but many don't know how it actually works and facilitates international diplomacy. So, in this video, we'll briefly explain the history of how and why the UN was created, the principal organs that make up the international body, and how they function day to day. And if you're interested in more topics about international law and diplomacy, then let us know in the comments down below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload going forward. So, following World War I, countries wanted to avoid a repeat of the horrific global conflict, and their leaders formed the League of Nations, dedicated to preventing the outbreak of further wars. As would become catastrophically obvious mere decades later, the League wasn't fit for purpose, largely because the United States refused to join, instead preferring the isolationism advocated by the framers. However, the US didn't really account for the effects its new status as a major power would have on global order if it remained isolated. The weakened League of Nations was wholly ineffective in its task of preventing another large-scale conflict. Once again, the world was rocked by World War, this time with even more disastrous consequences. During the final months of the war, states came together to create an international organisation more effective at preventing conflict, and the United Nations was born. On the 24th of October 1945, the United Nations came into existence following the ratification of the UN Charter by the five main allies: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, the Soviet Union and China, as well as a majority of other signatories. On January the 10th, 1946, the General Assembly met for the first time in Methodist Central Hall in Westminster, and the Security Council met for the first time a week later. A week after that, the General Assembly adopted the first UN resolution, establishment of a commission to deal with the problems raised by the discovery of atomic energy. This committee is composed of the members of the Security Council and, when it's not on the Council, Canada. We mentioned the General Assembly and the Security Council, but what exactly are they? The UN has 6 principal organs that oversee the organisation's main functions: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, the Secretariat, and the Trusteeship Council. Each principal organ is located at the UN headquarters in New York, with the exception of the ICJ, which is located at The Hague in the Netherlands.
When I used this 9-word technique, my friends laughed at me. But when I manifested a new house, a new car.
The General Assembly serves as the largest body of the UN, featuring representation from each of the member states. The Assembly is the UN's primary deliberative body and the forum before which we see most of the highest profile diplomacy take place, as the yearly session features not only ambassadors but plenty of heads of state. The General Assembly primarily deals with questions of international peace, admission of member states and the UN budget, all of which require a 2/3 majority vote, while less important votes pass by a simple majority. The Assembly is led by a president, elected for a 1-year term. The presidency offers a chance for ambassadors from smaller states to lead the world, as few states who have boasted a president of the General Assembly can be classified as major powers, the closest candidate for that honour being Canada in 1952. Instead of being dominated by these major powers, the presidency frequently features states like Mexico, Afghanistan, Liberia, St. Lucia, and currently the Maldives. The next is the Security Council. The Council is tasked with maintaining international peace and security, and has succeeded at least to the degree that recent wars generally have been contained to the region, not global scale. The Council's membership is limited to 15 states at any given time, with 10 seats rotating and 5 permanent seats awarded to the 5 main allies: the United States, United Kingdom, France, the Russian Federation, and the People's Republic of China. The 10 rotating members of the Council are elected for 2-year terms. India, Ireland, Kenya, Mexico and Norway will rotate out later this year, while Albania, Brazil, Gabon, Ghana and the United Arab Emirates will rotate next year. The permanent members, ironically, have gone through a few changes themselves. Initially, the Soviet Union held a permanent seat, but the seat passed to the Russian Federation following the Soviet fall. The People's Republic of China's seat initially was held by the Republic of China, which still survives as Taiwan. However, following Mao Zedong's overthrow of Chiang Kai-shek's national government, the United Nations eventually expelled the Republic of China on October the 25th, 1971, and Taiwan has since lost even its observer status. Although the General Assembly relies on the good faith of member states to carry out its resolutions, the Security Council's resolutions are binding on all member states. These resolutions include mandating peaceful resolutions to disputes, imposing sanctions, participating in a multinational peacekeeping force, and authorising to use force when a breach of the peace has occurred or is imminent. However, the 5 permanent members each have a veto over any proposal before the Council, so matters affecting any of the 5 generally are usually doomed to fail, leaving affected states to resort to customary international law to solve their disputes. Moving to more peaceful matters, we come to the Economic and Social Council. The Council has jurisdiction over matters of economy, social welfare, environment, and international development. The Council has 54 members, elected by the General Assembly for 3 years, with 18 seats up each year. The Council currently has 30 subsidiary bodies, ranging from regional commissions to bodies concerning criminal justice, women's rights, geographical names, and economic, social, and cultural rights. Next comes the International Court of Justice, more commonly known as the ICJ, or The Hague. The ICJ serves as the UN's main judicial body and rules on matters of international law and issues advisory opinions. The court is composed of 15 judges, all of whom must be nominated by the Permanent Council of Arbitration, then win elections before both the General Assembly and the Security Council. The judges must be from different states and may not hold political, administrative, or professional office during their 9-year terms. Although the court frequently convenes in its entirety, it may form chambers of 3 judges to deal with particular categories of cases, and decisions by the chambers carry the weight of the full court. Notably, the court cannot compel a state to appear before it. Instead, it must rely on the state's consent. This may be achieved by the parties to a dispute meeting one of 3 criteria: submitting a special agreement to the court, being state parties to a treaty that provides the court with jurisdiction over the dispute, or having all made declarations of their consent to the court's jurisdiction under the ICJ statute. Continuing our tour of the UN, we come next to the Secretariat. This body is the boots-on-the-ground organ of the UN, led by the Secretary-General and responsible for the UN's day-to-day business. The Secretary-General is nominated by the Security Council and elected by the General Assembly for a renewable 5-year term. They're assisted by thousands of UN staff members who carry out UN missions throughout the world. When you see UN personnel working out in the field on development or relief missions, this is typically the body overseeing their efforts on a day-to-day basis. The final principal organ of the UN is the Trusteeship Council. The Council was established in 1945 to provide supervision for 11 UN trust territories under the supervision of 7 member states. The purpose of the Council was to guide the territories under trusteeship towards being able to stand on their own as states in their own right. The Council's rules initially required it to meet annually, but the Council amended its rules to require meetings only when required shortly before suspending operations in 1994, when all the trust territories had attained self-government or independence. The Council remains inactive, but when it is active, it's composed of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. However, despite the Council's inactive status, it continues to elect a president and vice president so that it may be ready for action if called upon. The return to the Trusteeship Council may be on the horizon, however, as there have been calls to redefine the scope of the Council's duties to include environmental stewardship, though no decision has been taken to this point. So that's the UN and its principal organs in a nutshell. If you enjoyed this video, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. You can also talk to us on Twitter and on our Discord server to discuss all things UN. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Also, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible, and if you want to see your name at the end of videos, just like